Hello, it's Tom Curlis here from Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop rock and prog. Wanted to jump on here real quick when I heard the sad news about the passing of Dave Mason this week. Traffic has always been one of my favorite bands. I love Traffic, and he was the original in the original lineup of Traffic for the first two albums. His time in Traffic was very tumultuous, but he did write the first hit single "Hole in My Shoe," which I think that was what started the problem from the get-go. In 1967, he wrote, it was one of his earliest songs that he wrote, and it ended up being a huge hit. And I'm sure Steve Winwood was like, wait a minute, this is my band, because he had roadied for the Spencer Davis group. And he sang on a few Spencer Davis songs, some of the big ones, actually. I'm a Man, and what was the other one? Give Me Some Lovin'. So those two, I mean, those are sort of the later Spencer Davis singles, and he was on those. He sang on those. And Winwood was feeling a little bit constricted in Spencer Davis group, so he jumped to form Traffic with his buddies, basically, which were Jim Capaldi and Dave Mason, who had played in a band called Deep Feeling, and Chris Wood on Woodwinds. And they got out of the box real quick with what was it? Paper Sun was the other single from 1967, and Hole in My Shoe, and then they came out with full length Mr. Fantasy from 1967. And this is just, I love this record to death. He's all over this album. He plays guitar, sitar, sings, writes. He's writing a lot of the songs on here. Really, really good, really, really good album. Love this record. It's just so perfect for the psychedelia of 1967. But he was forced out of the band after this album was completed. So I don't think he played many of the live dates supporting it for various reasons. He just didn't fit in the band. I think Winwood was just kind of clashing with him a lot. I think part of the reason for that was, not to get too far in, but I think that they were a little bit like this. He had written one of the singles and had been successful. That was a bad start. He also would bring in completed songs with completed arrangements where he would tell the band, this is what I want. This is what you should play. That wasn't received very well. So that was another thing Winwood didn't like. He thought it was more of a democracy and a jam band, and everyone contributed to every song. That was more of his vision for the band. So he was pushed out of the band, but then he returned for the second record in 1968 because they needed material. They only had a couple songs, and the record company was like, "Okay, where's the second album? We need it." Back in the day, they used to push bands hard to get push records out quickly, and a record every year. And so they asked Dave to come back because they said, "Do you have any material?" And he said, "Yeah, I do. I've got a bunch of songs." And they said, "Okay, great. Come on back and let's make this record." So they make this album. And this one's a little stripped back, as a lot of bands were doing in 68 with Dylan and Beatles, the White Album, and John Wesley Harding and things like that. But he contributes, you can all join in, which is great. Don't Be Sad, Feeling All Right. Feeling All Right becomes a classic, right? It's originally on this record. Joe Cocker covers it on Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and it becomes this massive hit. And he does like a little bit of a different arrangement with it. But Dave, I mean, I think that set him for life. Honestly, that was a massive hit, and he wrote it. So every time it got played, he would get paid. So we love that. We used to call that mailbox money. He was getting a lot of mailbox money for Feeling All Right. And I think it really set him for life. I really do. So anyway, 1968, great record. Then they broke up, essentially. Steve Winwood went to Blind Faith, and they put out Last Exit. And the only Dave Mason track on this is Just For You, which was actually a solo single. And by the way, Bicycle Legs and I ranked the whole Traffic discography on his channel. So go check out Bicycle Legs channel, where we did the whole discography. Then he came back again, just to make the story more complicated. He left after the second record again. So he was out of the band again. Then they broke up. Then they kind of get back together, and they ask him back again, and he plays on this live album, Welcome to the Canteen. So he's all over this album, singing and playing. And this is a solid live record, actually. I really like this record. And they do, I think they do one of his solo songs on here too. What is it? Just curious. It is, I can tell you, Shouldn't Have Took More Than You Gave is on here. So pretty cool. And that song was on his first solo record called Alone Together from 1970. And this album is fantastic. This is a great record. I've always felt like this album got really overlooked. It's just very solid. Every song is great. He's on form with writing, and the band is incredible. The band has Jim Gordon on it. A lot of the Derek and the Dominoes guys are on this record. Jim Gordon on drums, Carl Radle on bass, Leon Russell on piano. I mean, it's the cream of the crop musicians on this record too. Rita Coolidge on vocals. It's incredible. He's got so many people on this album, and it rocks. It's a great album, and I really think it got sort of lost in the shuffle in 1970. Should have gotten better. Should have done better. So I guess what I'm saying, but I still think it's a sleeper record that is excellent. I love it. Alone Together from 1970. Then he did an album with Cass Elliot in 1971, which was kind of strange. It was sort of a strange follow up to Alone Together because it was a collaboration record, and he only writes half of the album, and it's kind of this was an odd follow up. He probably should have waited and done another solo album because it was the beginning of his solo career, but he didn't do that. So I think this kind of derailed just lost a little bit of momentum with this album. This is my opinion. He's got some good stuff on here. There's great songs on here, but it just wasn't a full Dave Mason record. So it was a little odd to follow up that banger of a debut. And honestly, I really feel like his solo career, he's one of those people, one of those artists that his first solo record was so good. It kind of felt like after that, there never was like an album as good as Alone Together. It went it kind of went like this as he went. And he made this album Headkeeper. He got angry about this because his record company Blue Thumb put this out, and he didn't want it to be put out. They were having a problem. He wanted to leave the label, and they were like, "Well, not so fast. You have a contract with us, and we need an album." And so he was working on his second solo record, and he wanted it to be half live and half studio, and so he was working on that, and I guess they had a dispute while he was working on it, and they took the tapes and put this out. So against his consent, he did not want this to come out. So he was calling it back in the day. He said this is a bootleg, but this is really good. I mean, I love the studio side. I think it's great, and then the live side is really solid too. So I really like this album a lot. I almost wish that he had just stayed on the label and finished this and really done it right, because this is some really good material on this. But then after that, he did It's Like You Never Left. That was pretty good. But then he did, I think it was like a self-titled record, and that one was like, eh. And then it just split Coconut, and oof. And then things started to just decline quickly. I mean, Let It Flow was a pretty good record. That was a pretty solid one. But he kind of turned into yacht rock a little bit, which I didn't like as much. He was trying to do that sort of soft rock thing in the later Columbia years. And then they ends up getting dropped by Columbia in 1980. And he has trouble getting another contract. Long story short, he ends up in Fleetwood Mac for a while. He does like a little stint in Fleetwood Mac that didn't last. He was invited to be on Ringo Starr and their all-star band, and then he got dropped during rehearsals. So I don't know what it was about Dave Mason. I feel like he's a very talented guy, but I think he just personally, maybe he didn't get along with people as well as maybe he should have, or didn't play the game the way he should have, or something. And maybe that was just his personality. He was just not. He seemed like sort of a wandering spirit of sorts, and kind of will travel kind of guy. And let's get into that. So he appears on all these classic records. And it's amazing. He plays acoustic guitar on All Along the Watchtower on Electric Ladyland. He was friendly with Hendrix, and he told the story. I saw him live I think it was like 2019, and it was a great show. I mean, it was one of those where I was like, oh, I guess I'll go. He's in town. We'll go, and went with a buddy, and we weren't really expecting much, and he sounded great. He played great. He was telling stories the whole night. He told the story about playing on this album, and how, he's telling Hendrix stories, and he said, Hendrix was really quiet, even though he was like a wild man on stage, but like off stage he was completely gentle. He was like a teddy bear. He was a super quiet guy. So anyway, it was really cool, and he told the story about recording All Along the Watchtower, and how, yeah, it's anyway really cool. So played on this, on Beggar's Banquet. He's on Street Fighting Man. He plays the shinai at the end, that sort of droning thing at the end, and I think he also plays some percussion on this. He ended up on the Stone sessions because he knew Jimmy Miller. Jimmy Miller had produced Traffic, so he knew Jimmy Miller. So Jimmy Miller brought him in for these sessions. So really cool that he plays on Street Fighting Man, which is one of my favorite Rolling Stones songs. There you go. All Things Must Pass. He's on this record. I mean, come on. He's on, like, how many more classic records can you play on? He played on this, he was on the sessions for this. I don't know how many songs he played on because it's not really documented on this, but he played on this album for sure. Delaney and Bonnie and Friends on with Eric Clapton. He's on this album. He played live with Delaney and Bonnie, which was considered, they were sort of like this kind of cult band who was getting more and more popular because Eric Clapton loved them, and Eric Clapton played with them on a regular basis. And of course, this band, the backing band, became Derek and the Dominos. And actually, Dave Mason was in the original iteration of Derek and the Dominos. He didn't last, as usual with Dave, but he was there at the beginning. So there you go. So he's on this record. And then he's also on this record, which I love, Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash. He and Graham Nash were very friendly, and I think he's on the second Wild Tales as well. So he just was one of those guys that just was on. He would just show up, and he would, like, let's jam, and people would say, okay. And he always had his guitar with him, and he was just at the right places at the right time. And I think he was pretty ambitious, I think, about that too, like trying to get, he always wanted to play. So that live show that I saw, a few years ago, and it was fantastic. He still sounded amazing, and he was just such a talent. He was one of those guys that, as soon as he starts playing and singing, you're like, yeah, that guy's got it. There's something about him that he had it, and he was just playing those leads, those really silky leads, that he plays. He was playing them so well. And, he's playing a lot of stuff from Alone Together, and it's all sounded fantastic live. And of course, he did his big songs, Feeling All Right, and We Just Disagree, and all that. And he was great because he played live a lot because he knew that, his records didn't sell anymore. So he even says that in one of his interviews. He's like, the records don't sell, so I got to go on the road. And he spent a lot of time on the road. He would just get a band, and the band was always solid, and then he would play gigs. He just gigged a lot. So, and you could tell when you saw him, it's like, okay, he's not rusty. He's playing, he's playing a lot of gigs. So yeah, no, he was solid to the end. So yeah, really sad to hear that he passed away. He's one of those guys that, not that many people really know that much about him. And so I figured I'd come on here and just sort of, tell you a little bit, maybe a little bit more than the average person would know about Dave Mason. He was on a lot of classic albums, and he was a big player back in the day. Not only as a member of Traffic, but as sort of a session guy as well, and a solo career. So all of those things. But yeah, Dave Mason, go listen to some of his music. Really sorry to hear that he passed away. And that's it. So if you like what you see, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care.